Hello my friends and sunflowers, my name is Lena and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about TXT The Doom's Night, and I don't really have anything else to say, so let's just go! The animation The Doom's Night provides a very relevant shift into how HYBE has chosen to present TXT's story, and that is with a name change. The Starseekers with TXT. It's similar to how a movie title would be like, "This is the movie with Brad Pitt." I don't know why I chose Brad Pitt, he was the first one to come to my head, but you get it. In fact, I think the Starseekers is what was previously quoted as the TU, which was the TXT universe. They've replaced every mention of it in descriptions, etc., with the Starseekers with TXT instead of TXT universe. And we've also recently seen this happen with NHYPEN as well, who now have their own title for their story, called Dark Moon with NHYPEN. And we've previously seen it with GFriend as well, which seems to be called Tale of the Glass Bead. I'm guessing BTS will soon be renaming their storyline, possibly to something like Youth, or to The Most Beautiful Moment in Life, or even Save Me. Those are all things we've kind of seen before, but it's all up in the air until they decide to officially change it, or maybe they won't change it because the BTS universe has just become its own title for it. You know, they even named the game the BTS Universe Story game. So, at least in TXT's case, we know that there is a very prominent name change from TXT Universe to the Starseekers, which is a very fitting title in my opinion. The reason for this name change, I think, has to do with the fact that before BTS Universe, TXT Universe, NHYPEN Universe, GFriend Universe, all of these things were separate. Like, when you say this is the TXT Universe, you think this is within its own story. And then you're like, this is the BTS universe, etc. But we've seen so many hints that sort of connect these universes. For example, the cat exists in both the BTS and the TXT universe. So they're not separate universes at all. And likewise, we've actually seen now NHYPEN has the Japanese boys from the new group that hasn't debuted yet in their music video, which means their storylines might connect. So it's not just that universe. I believe they're all part of the greater HYBE universe. So yes, there's no longer a distinction between the universes. They're their own storylines and they're all happening, I'm assuming, in the HYBE universe. Anyways, about this animated film. First, let's place it on our timeline here. I think people are a little bit confused because they seem to think that Taeyeon has blonde hair because he recently had blonde hair in the Blue Hour comeback. However, that's not the case. The hair in this animation follows the hair that they had in Magic Island Runaway kind of era. So whenever they had their Magic comeback, this is what the hair is, and I'm assuming this is kind of when they started working on this animation, was back in that era because of that. This is why Beomgyu has light hair, not Taehyun. Hyuga has like his floppier hair because it was longer in that music video. Taeyeon's hair is a little shorter and more tamed, and Subin had plain black hair in that music video. And of course, Yeonjun had his blue hair. Something to mention is the fact that The Doom's Night was actually the title of the first chapter in the Eternity music video. This makes sense as it shows everything leading up to that destruction that we see. By the way, if you're by chance working at HYBE and you're watching this, could you do me a solid and add English subtitles to the Magic Island and the Nap of a Star music videos? Not the song part. You already have that covered, but like the part with the text that's really important to understanding the story. Okay, thanks. I would really appreciate it. I think it's really important. So let's just sort of summarize what happens in this animation. On the most basic surface level, The Doom's Night shows Tumoro우바이투게더 through various stages of their life, from their childhood games until their late teens, which is of course the part where they're attacked by a dragon that destroys the stadium that they're performing in. We see Subin travel back to their past, where he learns the secret to defeating this dragon, the Star's Song, and ends up taking the dragon on by himself. It's magical realism that takes place in a mixed version of reality between our world and the like digital magical one. It introduces a variety of antagonistic figures, from the dragon to the shadow with blue and green eyes that they make a contract with, to the figures that attack them seemingly without reason. And this digital world that we see in several of the flashbacks are what we call Magic Island. So this island seems to be in and around the real-life location called Tuksum, which is in Korea. And this is in fact where they hold the Starlight Festival, which is what we see happening in the Eternally music video, but it's also very briefly shown in this animation. I doubt this is a coincidence because they were actually seen traveling towards Tuksum in the Magic Island music video. I think this is kind of like where they tend to go in Magic Island, but Magic Island can exist in more places than like that. However, the world that Magic Island resides in, the digital one, can exist in several other places, but this is where their island is. The island seems to build itself as the boys are needing it, which we've seen before in the concept trailer for Magic. It also adds further evidence that the boys are on Magic Island in the Nap of a Star music video, since we see Kai sitting on this same sculpture in that music video. There are interesting looking ruins in the animation that we haven't seen before, but I can't help but wonder if they're going to be important, since we don't see them or any of the floating things in the Magic Island music video when they're physically on the island. We also see the boys in Magic Island in their new pop-up book. It's interestingly called Tale of Magic Island, which sounds incredibly similar to GFriend's A Tale of the Glass Bead, which also had a storybook. They were included on the album instead of like its own pop-up book, but you know. The way that they chose to word this is very telling in my opinion. And not only that, but the space and angle that the image shows us in this trailer seems to mirror that of the one of destruction that we got in the Eternity album photo card, where everything looks dead and the boys were injured and the star is no longer working right. I should note this is my absolute favorite photo card ever. I love it so much. Anyway. It does appear as if the island needs the star to function properly, which might be why in Nap of a Star, the stars are kind of more like gears in the ticking of a clock. I have previously wondered if the star and the ghost we see, which I will talk about a little bit later, are kind of the same thing, but I don't think that's properly the case. They kind of go back and forth. They've actually referred to the star as their dream before, which makes a lot of sense with what we're seeing, but they also, in their recent fan live, made the star Moa, and during their lightstick reveal, they also revealed that the star is called Moa, and I think this is actually because the ghost helps them revive the star, because it's the act of being together that makes everything possible. Hence, Tomorrowbaitugeher, their name. Also, the books for Tale of the Magic Island are 3 interesting colors: blue, red, and green. The 3 colors that make up the pixels on the screen that you're looking at right now. Not surprising, considering we just talked about how Magic Island is most likely digital in some way. And in fact, the idea that it is digital is not new. It has hints all the way back in the Crown music video, where they literally recreated a scene from The Matrix, along with various glitches through different music videos, and them literally entering a video game in the Japanese version of Runaway. They're literally going into the digital world. Think Digimon, except maybe without the digital monsters part. Well, but we are slowly unraveling more of what this other reality might be as we go along. So this digital Magic Island exists for other groups in the Hive universe as well, such as where the magic shop is in BTS. And recently, all of the images that we saw in NHypen's down version indicate that they probably have some sort of ties to Magic Island as well. Magic Island being a relative term because I don't know what else to call this world. GFriend have also been shown following the rules to get to this Magic Island, and the floating doors that seem to be a facet of this space are visible in New West's Nocturne trailers. However, in TXT's case, this Magic Island specifically that they travel to seems to follow the rules of the game Dungeons and Dragons. And to agree, of course, I believe that it also mirrors back your subconscious, which is why it builds itself around you in the first place. However, this is why we see dice being shown several times and used in the Eternally music video, because the 20-sided die is the most commonly used die in the game D&D. The higher you roll, the better. A 20 is considered a perfect roll, and you are absolutely bound to succeed, possibly above and beyond, whereas a 1 would be, you know, you absolutely fail, and rather than just fail, you'd probably have extremely dire negative consequences. Whether the rolls in between that succeed or fail have a lot to do with the dungeon master or the game master. They often will roll a counter die to see what, you know, whether their situations work out, but usually it's up to their discretion because they're the ones who are sort of leading the storyline. Bung PD, I'm looking at you. I think some people assume that because Subin has the die, he is the game master, but all of the players in D&D always have the die. So I'm not so sure about that. I'm more inclined to believe that Subin is just a player like all of the others, even if the die does seem to give him special abilities to see their past, for example. It doesn't seem like he's actually making the reality, so therefore he wouldn't be the dungeon master. In the animation, we see all of the events come from the 8 side of the die, like the number 8, like they rolled an 8, which makes me think that this is what happens in this version of reality when you roll an 8. And that's a relatively low roll. I don't even think they re-rolled the die necessarily, because they do have the power to just rewind time within their timeline, so it's not like breaking through realities, which is something that I've talked about before. But speaking of D&D, we actually have very detailed character sheets, essentially, of what their D&D characters, their characters in Magic Island actually do, thanks to the VR version of Minisode 1. So let's read some important information as follows, and related to what we saw in the animation. Kai is a mystic and a bard. In the animation, he has wings. As a child, he has a magic book. Both he and Taeyeon have this book, by the way, and they're both different types of magic users, but it's unclear if this is the same book that we see Subin and Beomgyu holding in the Eternally music video. And of course, he has birds as his Patronus. You'll note that they each have their own, like, Patronuses in this animation, which is what we as a fandom has just collectively agreed to call those blue, like, magical, spirit-like creatures. They kind of feel like familiars almost. But yeah, it's the one that they're using in the childhood flashback scene. It's possible that this relates to their stats and personalities in general, and some of the Patronuses might actually even be mythical creatures, and because of the, like, blue color, I do think that they're actually summoned, possibly using magical circles, but this might be bypassed to some degree as well, like they don't actually have to cast it, or they only have to cast it once. I'm not sure how the dynamics of how these are summoned actually works, because we see Yeonjun summon one without even realizing that's what he's doing later on in the video. But this summoning spell was in fact mentioned in the lyrics of Runaway. The sky-colored magic circle, it will color the classroom, so that the summoning spell brings us together. Yeonjun is a paladin and a knight. He has a sword, and he's got a kitsune, which is a mythical 9-tailed fox, as a Patronus. And it seems to not have all 9 tails. So kitsune kind of grow their tails one by one as they get older and gain more knowledge. So this is kind of making sense, because he's just a kid here that his kitsune wouldn't have all of his tails. And this might match with Yeonjun's own growth as well. We've yet to see him use it when he's older. This was actually hinted at in the Crown music video. Very early on. They knew what they were doing. He also has a strong association with horses, as seen in the animation and hinted at in the Japanese version of Blue Hour. He may have 2 Patronuses for the same reason that he has 2 Pains, which I'll talk about in a bit. And that's for reasons that I also don't really know about why, except that maybe he's like the main character or something. Taeyeon, he is an adventurer and a sorcerer. As a kid, he has a staff and a hat, and of course, as I mentioned before, he has a magic book as an adult. He has a tiny dragon as his Patronus, but it might also be a mythical creature called a Quetzalcoatl, which is a mythical feathered serpent. By the way, credit to the person who found all these mythical creatures that relate to their Patronuses. I will leave a link to their Twitter in the description below. Beomgyu is a mentalist and a druid. As a kid, he seems to just be like a plant druid type thing, and as an adult, he has a potion which match with the whole druid healing thing. I used to call him the band-aid of the group, and this just ties in so well with that. He uses plants and is a healer. His Patronus is the forest spirit, Baymax looking creature. Some people said that they believe it's a rock golem, but I don't know if that's 100% true. I'm just getting like Studio Ghibli vibes, like forest protectors. I was looking through lists of mythical creatures on my own, and I could not find anything that looked like it, but it does kind of remind me of these guys from Laputa Castle in the Sky, so but just like bigger. I think the idea that it's a forest spirit of some kind fits the character of Beomgyu really well. Subin is an archer and a ranger. What he receives as an adult is not shown, but it could be a die or a bow and arrow, which is what he has when he's a kid. He is just so obviously an archer. His Patronus seems to be a horse or stag-like creature, which could be a Harry Potter reference, but it could also possibly be the Chinese mythological creature called a Qilin. Appears to rulers, which Subin is the leader of the group, and it also appears to sages. And, you know, if you take a look at this chart, his wisdom is maxed out, so... By the way, I don't think I mentioned this, but the Patronus thing actually comes from Harry Potter, if you haven't seen that. And the Star Seekers actually takes inspiration from the Harry Potter, like, movie logos, which is very interesting. So I feel like all of the connections to Patronuses is actually intentional. Plus, like I said, this happened in the era of the Magic album, which literally, its title track song, Runaway, the Korean title, is waiting for you on platform 9 3/4, which in the Harry Potter universe is the train platform that takes you to Hogwarts, which is the magical school, so they're running away to Hogwarts. It just makes sense. The fact that this is in the same, like, timeline as the Magic era indicates to me that these connections are supposed to be made. Speaking of the Magic album, we also see them sort of using the abilities that they had in the Japanese version of Runaway, which was actually on the Magic Hour Japanese album, but you know what, we're not being that specific. For example, in that music video, it's shown that Yeonjun's ability is Thunderbolt, and he, like, defends an attack with Thunderbolts, and he does this exact thing when they're being attacked in this animation. We do see a few more powers used in other music videos as well, such as Kai and his ability to literally rewind time that we see in Runaway. And more recently, in the Japanese version of Blue Hour, we see Taeyeon able to levitate teacups, which will come back around, so please remember that. So here's a question for you. Are the boys cheating? While you were looking at the graphs for the VR version of Minisode 1, did you notice something? Each of the members has a specifically maxed out high stat in a specific aspect related to their characters. Like how I said, Subin's wisdom is maxed out. In the past, people have actually found hints that TXT has been cheating. Specifically Yeonjun, who does also feel guilty in his photo cards, but this might apply to just the whole group as well. However, the specific cheat that was found was in, again, the VR version of Minisode 1, where we saw a cheat code that was used in the game Doom, which would make you unable to die when you used it. It feels like it's not a coincidence that this is for the game Doom, and this animation is called The Doom's Night. Their detail with Easter eggs is actually insane. We know that Yeonjun's contract with the blue and green-eyed cat essentially shows us that he will die in some fashion. So was this code used as a precautionary measure against that? And if so, is that why we see the dragon? Hold that thought. I'll come back to it. True Names is a part of D&D, which isn't necessarily official. It's considered homebrew, but it's extremely popular. This is first brought up when those creepy human-like things whisper to Kai, "Do you know how many names fade away without ever being called?" Which seems to tie directly into the True Names thing, seeing as that chapter comes immediately after that scene. It also might be tied to Moa, which is the fandom name, which is most likely the ghost girl that we see both in this animation and previously in other music videos. After all, the whole stadium got destroyed, so. And like I said, that also might be the true name of the star. However, the main reason that it's tied to the ghost is because we are frequently being told that the boys have something they must remember, a name they must recall. We literally hear it echoed in the Magic Island music video. We see it written on the mirror in the Eternally music video. It's all over the place. The name they must recall. Moa, probably. But I think that there's more to it that hasn't been revealed yet, and here's why. The rules in D&D for true names are generally as followed. Like I said, it does sort of change from here to there. There's not a consistent one because it's not technically official, but these are the most common attributes to it. Everyone has a true name. In many renditions, the true name is in an ancient language, which doesn't seem to be the case for TXT, but it almost always represents some sort of aspect of your personality. If you're brave, for example, then your true name might have something to do with bravery. This leads me to believe that TXT's true names actually have something to do with those character sheets that we just saw. It seems unlikely to just be their given names, and it's also possible that we haven't seen it yet. The other major important aspect of true names is that knowing another person's true name gives you some amount of control over them. The amount of control varies frequently, from complete and total control to subtle things, but it does make you think of one particular character in the TXT universe. The cat. I'm theorizing that the cat essentially learns your true name when you're making a contract with it, which is why, no matter the timeline, it keeps finding you until you pay its price. In BTS's story, the price that Jin has to pay is related to the map of the soul. But what is the price that TXT must pay? And why does it affect them so much? But there's a counter to this, because if everyone has a true name, so does the cat. The color purple seems to be tied to not only the dragon and the lightning in the sky, but also the cat for some reason. Which, speaking of, this cat kind of looks eerily like the sirens that turned G-Friend into witches in their storybooks that came with their recent albums. But this purple similarity makes me wonder, was the dragon part of someone else's contract? After all, if you put together all of the pains of the boys, you basically get a dragon. Are they bound to turn into a dragon? Purple is also a mix of blue and red. Blue being the safe magic and red being the corrupt magic. Interestingly, these colors were mentioned in the lyrics of Blue Orangeade from the Star album. You like red roses, you like the blue sea, but I like violet. I want to go to the mountains again. I want to paint this world is another lyric later on in that song, which we see them doing in Blue Hour. And as I've said countless times before, blue and red can represent the fantasy or the magic versus the reality of situations. So the purple that they're using can also indicate the fact that the worlds are mixing. Fantasy and reality are coming together, and of course wreaking havoc, or chaos, if you will. We also see that magic can start off as blue and then turn into red, which we see the attacker do here. And there's also the blue light, which is mentioned in G-Friend's Tale of the Glass Bead, but they are also sort of warned against this light in the lyrics of Labyrinth, which say, don't be fooled by a shining fake. Red also seems to show corruption in the Hybe universe, as we see in past TXT music videos and just elsewhere, such as Enhype and recently. Thank you, vampires. And of course, in the Can't You See Me music video with Beomgyu when he turns particularly violent. But on top of all of these other things, the color purple emerges one more time in this video that is noteworthy. And that is when the boys make a contract with the cat, and their pains emerge. Now, these pains are referenced in pretty much everything else that's been released that is TXT universe related or the Starseekers related, including photo cards, past music videos, performances, whatever. It's even in some of their choreography. They hit it everywhere. Previously, this has been equated to their fear of growing up, of reaching a certain age and becoming an adult. Basically, they didn't want to move past the fun of their current lives. And now there does seem to be a little bit more to it, but I'll get to that in a minute. First, let's go over what these pains are for each of the members, just in case you're not familiar with it. Yeonjun has both the horns on his head and a cut on his neck. Subin has pointy ears, Beomgyu's got spikes coming from his shoulders, Taeyeon's pain comes from his eye, and Kai, like Yeonjun, also has two pains, one in his heart, and the other is a pair of wings that he gets. These obviously mimic what we see them looking like as children when they're playing around, which I think is just terribly rude. Especially because, according to the lyrics of Crown, Yeonjun, who grows his horns, he hates himself for it and he considers himself a monster, and that's kind of why he runs away. We've seen this narrative a couple times. However, as they showed in this animation, it does seem like this pain can be healed with some form of friendship or love, like when Moa is taking Subin's hand. This causes the purple to recede, and this makes me think of Kai giving his hand to Yeonjun in Nap of a Star, where it healed the star as well. The act of being together and believing in each other seems to be a way to counteract the effects of the price that they have to pay. This is told to us in a similar way in BTS's storyline as well. They have to find the map of the soul, which has to do with their memories. Interestingly enough, it seems that the act of not believing in everyone else is what creates the situation that they have to make a contract with the cat in the first place. Like, Yeonjun clearly believes that he cannot beat these attackers, and thus he calls upon a higher power, the cat, and makes a contract with it to presumably give him a lot of power. I'm not entirely sure what he gets out of this contract, because they already had the magic. But presumably he believes that he is safe from these people, and they do in fact leave, so I guess it worked out in the end. By the way, speaking of pain, Kai had the wings, but at the end of this animation we do in fact see Subin with wings as well. An interesting fact is that in the Crown music video, the two with wings were actually Subin and Yeonjun, but the one on Subin's side seemed to be dragon wings more than angel ones, and I think that's an indicator of what's to come. Remember what I said about contracts? As we know, Subin, through his wormhole, he was able to see that in the past, they as a group had defeated a similar dragon with the Star's song, and assumes that that's the way to fix their problem in their imminent future, that he keeps having visions of. But Chaos Theory, which I assume their next album, The Chaos Chapter, is based off of, tells us that things won't necessarily work out the way that you think they will because you change something. Basically, if you do something slightly different, you could completely change the chain of events. Also, he goes at it alone. Like, their name is Tomorrowbaitugeather. They have to get to tomorrow by being together, which they aren't. So Subin's only like halfway there. Anyways, this Star song, it has been mentioned several times before. In the Can't You See Me lyrics, it said, "Abandoned island, that forgotten melody," of course referring to Magic Island that they forgot about and the song that they also forgot about. On Subin's magic photo card, it says, "If there's one wish, I don't want to forget this song." Of course, because his ears are his pain, he heard the song. It's possible that him going back in time had to do with a contract with the cat, which is why he gets that pain in the first place. That's not super clear because we only see the cat interacting with Yeonjun, unless the die was a gift from the cat. And Kai is also alluded to having a secret that he's not aware of, and while I have a ton of theories of what that could be, including him going through a magic circle, which is probably why he's just able to, you know, see things through the mirror as he does, I think majorly right now his secret is that he is a bard, because it's a secret he doesn't know he has, because they all forgot about this, presumably, and thus he would be able to sing the Stars song, which, as we know, seems to be able to trigger wings and stuff, which are his pain, so that checks out really interestingly, doesn't it? It's like he's destined to sing the song, and that's why the wings are his pain. And in the Magic Island music video, yes, the very one that I suggested needs English subtitles, says that the boys are on a quest that they don't know that they're on, to find the Stars song. But of course, in the music video, it also tells us that there's obstacles in the way that they must overcome that they aren't even aware of yet. So basically, I think there's more than just the Star song that they have to overcome. And oh, there are definitely obstacles. In fact, this music video introduced a new one to us that we had only seen previously before one time, and that is, of course, the witches. Well, possibly, I mean, I've chosen to use the word witches because in Nap of a Star, which is where we first saw something akin to a witch, I assume this is the same thing, and so the name has just carried over. In Nap of a Star, we saw this witch that with a skeleton face, which flew overhead when the star fell asleep, and it was hiding in the forest behind Yeonjun. In this animation, the attackers seem to be without faces. It's hard to say if the thing that tells Kai that, you know, names are forgotten, that is also the witch that later attacks them. I'm leaning towards yes, because it seems like the attackers don't have faces either, but I would like to say that the clothing that we do see them wearing actually matches something we've seen before, which is, of course, Taehyun in the VR version of Minisode, yet again. So on Twitter, there's a user named Sukadu who came up with this theory that is really great. I think people have probably seen it at this point, but I wanted to cover it because I personally really agree. It tells us that these figures that are attacking them, these witches, might be Subin and Taehyun, which are also the liars that we see in Can't You See Me. Except that they're not the Subin and Taehyun that we know, they are the ones possibly from another dimension or somewhere in the future, or both. This is based on the fact that we see the attackers using arrow magic, like Subin's ability as an archer, and causes these falling leaves to float and freeze, similar to what we see Taehyun doing in the Japanese version of Blue Hour. Remember when I said you have to remember that? This is why. As others have pointed out, this could be why Bomgyu tries to attack Taehyun in Can't You See Me. He believes that he's the witch that we saw attack them, which might be accurate information, just not accurate in the right way. Also, side note, just a cute fun fact of something that I never noticed before. He has a little cape. In the moment he attacks Taehyun in Can't You See Me, like, it's not part of his shirt. It's something literally tucked into the collar, and it looks like a tiny cape. And I just find that really cute, because he's probably believing he's doing, like, justice somehow. He's like, I'm taking out the people who are attacking us, or something. It's so cute. Oh, I mean, even though it makes him look like an antagonist, like, there's nothing you can do about that. Anyway, that's why his faith in his friends falls apart later on, yada yada. If you have read his photo cards, that's why the sudden shift between magic and eternity happens, because he believes that it's everyone for himself, so. It's unclear why Taein and Subin from possibly another universe or the future would come in and attack the boys. I can only assume it's to trigger them making a contract with the cat. I can't tell if this is a positive thing and why they would go through such lengths to do this, because it is this particular moment that causes Yeonjun to make that contract with the cat in the first place, at least in this particular situation, because the cat appears all over the place. Anyways, if you have any ideas of why they would want to do that, let me know. I'll be checking the comments. Interestingly, these witches do seem to be able to teleport, similar to how we've just seen the vampires and the werewolves in Enhypen. I kind of feel like teleportation is like a common ability in the Hype universe. But beyond this possibility, this might tie into Taein's photo card from Star, which said, "What we are going through, someone else has gone through. There must be a way. I will find the clue." By the way, clue was his Morse code all the way back in like their intros, like the questioning video intros. And I do believe his arc is coming next, because we kind of didn't really see it yet. We got some hints in Runaway, but we didn't like see his point of view the way that we've seen Yeonjun's, Subin's, and of course Pyeonggyu's. So in my opinion, the clue and like Taein's whole arc is gonna be next. If he can somehow question the witches that attack them, he might be able to find a way out of this situation that's been created by creating these contracts with the cat. Because, theoretically, if it's himself and Subin attacking them and they're from the future and they know what happens, he would be able to ask them what they did so they could avoid it. I don't know, just a possibility. Is that his clue? Hello, I just wanted to interject really quickly because we just got the announcement of the next album, which is going to be called The Chaos Chapter Freeze, which, first of all, I just talked about how we saw them like freeze time, and it's not the first time they've frozen time either. It kind of happened in Eternally. Also, to freeze something would be the opposite of setting it on fire, so it does seem to be a counter for fire. And then, to build off the fact that Taein wants to catch them, like as a detective, as a criminal, as a clue, that's his thing, what do you yell when you want a criminal to stop? You yell freeze! Also, just an additional side note, the two albums kind of look like cat's eyes, and then the version in the middle that has the heart, first of all, Hello Love Chapter, is called You, so it's like the cat's eyes, and then what's in between them? You. Anyways, back to the video. Now I'm gonna go into some additional points, because there's some other stuff that I wanted to mention, but it wasn't really fitting into the previous topics. So let's just clear them out. Let's get them over with now. First, the tree. The tree appears in the Magic Island music video, and we see it here too. I also think that it might be related to the tree that we see in the Stay Gold music video, and possibly related to G-Friend's tree as well. Mirrors are related to magic somehow. Please see my short video about how that might work. But also, early on in this animation, they have no reflection, which I can't tell if that was like a mistake. They just didn't bother to animate it because it wasn't important. Not sure, because we see them having reflections later, but in close-up shots. I can't tell if it was intentional or not, but I wanted to mention it just in case it is in fact intentional. Mirrors also open up the portal, the wormholes, to different times or possible realities. Note that Kai sees an idealized reality, and then Subin goes into the past in both the Eternally music video and here. I could almost say that he went straight from the Eternally music video, holds the die, and then later that evening, the same die turns into a portal that gives him the secret that he has to know. The die does seem to completely break open to cause this wormhole in the mirror. So yeah, mirrors are super important. Kai sees a more ideal reality and Subin sees the past. We didn't know then that there's a world beyond what our eyes can see, which is a line from Doom's Night and a bold-faced lie if I ever saw one. Just because you don't remember it doesn't mean your past did not happen. Which, by the way, why did they forget? Because, yeah, at some point in their childhood, they were all really good friends, and then they forgot about it. That thing in the story that we just got the major clue of what to do from, like, we see it happening. Clearly, it happened. It has been hinted at before as well in Nap of a Star. They're literally playing at the Starlight Festival as friends, looking up at the star, doing their thing. And that is why it is so important that Subin ends up back in time to get the die, to go back then through the mirror and see the star song, the hint. They forgot about it. Anyways, mirrors are clearly a key to being able to see things. I've gotten very passionate about this topic. Time to move on. The Northern Lights. At the end of the animation, Subin releases his wings and presumably attempts to sing the star's song to fend off the dragon, and the Northern Lights are visible in the sky. Now, the Northern Lights are pretty interesting because depending on where you are in the world, they meant different things because, you know, for example, if you're in the northern North America, they had the Northern Lights fairly frequently, so it wasn't super ominous or anything like that. But in some places, like in Europe, if you saw the Northern Lights, it's like, what is that? This is a bad omen. And even then, in places in Asia like Japan, China, and of course Korea, they had their own meaning as well. Which, by the way, they were also less frequent in these places. But interestingly enough, it is presumed that the idea of dragons flying through the sky actually came from seeing the Northern Lights in these Asian regions, and that it was a celestial battle between the two different dragons of good and evil. Seems pretty similar to this situation, doesn't it? I think this is why the Northern Lights appear above Subin here. It is a reference to this myth. It also could mean something else that we haven't seen yet, but I wanted to mention the myth because I thought it was really cool, personally. Anyways, that's it. I'm done. That's all I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and make sure to hit this subscribe button and turn on notifications so that YouTube tells you every single time I post a new video. All of my social media is linked in the description below, and of course, I wanted to give a shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. As it is, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay sunny, my friends. Bye!